Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my book channel. It's been a minute. We actually didn't end up having a video last week. My life got a little bit crazy and I wasn't able to put a video out, which was really sad. But we're back on track and nothing crazy is planned for at least the next couple of months. So back to our regular schedule, releases on Tuesdays, second Tuesday of the month. We're going to have our reading recaps. Yeah, we're going to have fun. So let's get started. Let's talk about everything I read last month in the month of May, which I got a lot done, got a lot read, and it was my birthday, so I also bought a lot of books. I really like having the media that I can come back to whenever I want. I was talking to a friend about this today about how purchasing physical copies of the books that I love or the books that I think I'm going to love, because sometimes if there's a good sale, I just go ahead and buy it. It's something that is really important to me because I can go back whenever I want. I can lend it to a friend. I can have it for years. And then when someone else finds it, I can be like, oh, don't worry, you can borrow a copy. So lots of books bought last month. And here's a little secret. I'm taking off work on Friday to go to a huge warehouse sale at Half Priced Books. We love being sustainable and giving books or clothes second homes. Maybe we'll do a book haul on Instagram of the cheap books that are getting a second life in our house. So without further ado, all of the books that I read in the month of May. So the month of May was actually a very series heavy month for me, which is not necessarily my normal. And I think I went in with a plan. I had a plan of attack for the month of May. I had goals and I had a plan. And normally that's not me. Normally I'm very much a mood reader and I let the universe tell me what I need to read, or I listen to my gut or my feelings or what's going on in my life. And I either need a reflection of that or maybe a distraction from that. I let that influence what I read. But last month, May, I had a series that has been on my TBR for the longest time, and I just had to do it. I honestly was planning this for a while to make sure I could do this series all in one go. And then the other series is not quite as straightforward. I would say it's a series in that each of the books, they're not strictly romance. They're YA fiction. But they're all standalone books. But you might see cameos or the writing style. It just, to me, they're a series. So the first of that series is My Lady Jane. I've talked about this before on this channel. I fell in love with Cynthia, Brodi, and Jodi. They call themselves the Lady Janies, and they met on tour. They were all on their own book tours and met and had a great time and decided to write books together so that they could tour together more. And if that's not just the cutest thing that you've ever heard, it's one of the cutest things that I've ever heard. And so their goal with these books is to take women in history who didn't get happy endings and give them happy endings. I think that's really lovely. My Lady Jane is about Lady Jane Grey. She was the Queen of England for 9 whole days before, if we're looking at history, she gets beheaded. That's a rough go. In this book, we have a little bit of magic. We have people called Ethians, and their innate magic is that they can turn into animals. And of course, when there's two groups that are different for some reason, there's going to be conflict. So you have the Verities, who are strictly human, do not have an animal form. And you have the Ethians, who have animal form. And beyond becoming queen, Jane is married off into I don't even know if it's a marriage of convenience. It's just like, you're gonna marry this person because you're a woman and you have to do what we say. And she just goes, oh, okay, yeah. Does she protest? She does, but the lady doth not protest too much. And hint, hint, the romance, she might fall in love with her husband, Gifford, or as we like to call him, G. I really loved this book. I really loved all of the books that I read last month. I gave this book 4.5 stars. Loved it. I have become obsessed with the Lady Janies. I will be on the lookout for more of their books, both their individual books, but also the Lady Janies series. So the first book of last month, My Lady Jane. Continuing on with the Lady Janies, I skipped 2 of the books. The order, I believe, goes My Lady Jane, and then I think My Plain Jane, and then My Calamity Jane, and then we switch over to the Marys. However, since I've started this series years after it was published, I had the advantage of being able to skip around a little bit. And like I said, the books can all be standalones. So I purposely, this time it wasn't an accident. I know there have been times when I read series out of orders because I don't do the investigation before, I just pick up a book by vibes. This time it was on purpose. I knew My Contrary Mary was not the next one they wrote. However, it's in the same era. And so I was hoping there would be cameos because Mary makes a cameo in My Lady Jane. And I was correct. There were cameos, and it was lovely. I love it when we see cameos from authors when they're like, we know that you want to see our other people that you love. Here you go. We love it. My Contrary Mary is about Mary, Queen of Scots. And this book follows her time in France as being engaged to Prince Francis, or I believe they call it the Dauphin in France. And we see what would be historically a good chunk, but closer to the end of her life, where Frances dies and she goes back to Scotland to find that her mother has died and has to make a political marriage instead of a love match to try and save her power and her kingdom. But this is the Lady Janies, and we don't want Mary to end up in a marriage with someone she doesn't absolutely adore in either marriage. And we want her to be happy with all of her ladies' maids who also happen to be named Mary. And there's also the magic of Ethians. Mary is also a mouse. Spoiler. I don't know if that's actually a spoiler. If it is, so sorry, but I think it's disclosed in like the first 3 chapters, which is something I should mention. So far, in my experience with the Lady Janies, these books are all multi-point of view, and each book has 3 different main characters that you're following along. So, My Contrary Mary follows Mary. It also follows Frances, and it follows Ari, the daughter of Nostradamus. This one, also amazing, 4.5 stars. Hint, that may be a trend for these books. And last but not least, for the Lady Janies, for the month of May, I have like at least 3 other books that I need to read from the Lady Janies. So those will be coming soon, I'm sure, because like I said, I am obsessed. I went to My Calamity Jane because I was in a little bit of a mood reader, and I was like, no, I want to do this one next. My Calamity Jane follows Calamity Jane, And different era, different type of magic, still 3 POVs. This time we follow Calamity Jane and the Pistol Prince, Frank? Frank, the Prince Frank, and Annie. I was so tickled with this book from page 1 because the first part of this book takes place in Cincinnati, which is where I am currently living. And I just get so tickled when books take place in places where I am living or where I have lived. Basically, if I have an idea of the area, I get even more tickled. So it takes place in Cincinnati, which also was a little bit of a surprise for me because when I think Wild West, Cincinnati is not the first place I think of. But we do make it out to the Wild West. And living in Cincinnati, I have come to discover, maybe I should have known this before, but I didn't really put anything together until I lived in Cincinnati, that Annie Oakley is from the Ohio area, and there's a part of Cincinnati called Oakley, and there's this big, beautiful mural of Annie Oakley. So when Annie was introduced, she wasn't introduced as Annie Oakley. And I was like, I wonder if this is Annie Oakley. And I was right. Terrible singing aside, I was right. And it was super exciting. We get a couple of different romances in this book. And we get to see the Wild West. The magic's a little bit different. Instead of there being Ethians, I read this, so I don't know if I'm actually pronouncing this correctly, but I believe the magic is called Garu. They're werewolves. They're werewolf population. And Calamity Jane and her posse they're not just hunting the werewolves, the Garu. They're specifically hunting just bad people, the werewolves that are purposely harming other people. But there's a twist. Maybe there's 2, and they're very tasty twists. So, my Calamity Jane, also 4.5 stars. For real, I went into this series. I only purchased my Lady Jane first, and I was about halfway through reading it. And I knew I was gonna, the next time I was at the bookstore, I would need to purchase at least a couple of the other ones because the writing is so funny. It's so well written. I wouldn't know that there were 3 authors to this book. It's very consistent. The POVs each have distinct tones, so you're not confused with who you're reading, even though it's labeled at the beginning of each chapter. It's just so well done. These 3 authors have just shot so high in my esteem from how well they've written these books, and they've taken history and kind of thrown it out the window at times, but in the best possible way. And I don't know, if you're a reader like me, when something's based in history, I like to do a little bit of research afterwards. So, I go up to Wikipedia and I do some light reading on my heroes that I got to the fantasy version of how their stories ended. And it was just lovely. So if you're looking for lighthearted fiction with some magic that throws history out the window, I would recommend any of them, even the books that I haven't read yet. They have to be this good. The bar is so high now for the rest of the books, and they clearly didn't let me down. I read 3 back-to-back, 4.5 stars across the board. But now we will move on to the next series that I read in May. I just checked to make sure that everything had filmed okay. And I'm so happy I did because it did not, for whatever reason, stopped recording. halfway through, so we're just going to do a little reshoot. But Benefit already joined us. She's very excited to be here. All right, so the other series that I read in May was dun, 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 The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. As I said earlier, this series has been on my TBR, and Alex is one of my absolute favorite authors. Nike Girl is also joining us, which means Artie is leaving. We can't have too many cats in the video. You would think this is a cat and a book channel. The Darkest Minds. This is a YA dystopian fiction novel. May was very much a YA fiction month. High School Mackenzie would have been so excited. She would have eaten all these books up. I ate all these books up. They were fantastic. Darkest Minds takes place in what I would say is a modern day America. This was published in 2012, so like right when I was in high school. I don't know why I didn't hear of this or read it because, like I said, I would have loved it. And in this world, in this alternate America, when you hit puberty, if I can even say that word, when you hit puberty, one of two things happen. You either die, that's rough, or you get powers. These powers could be you have like a photographic memory, or you're like really good with technology, so you're kind of seen as harmless, or maybe you can like pull objects to you. Maybe you can work with electricity, getting kind of dangerous. Maybe you can like control fire, also dangerous. But maybe, in even rarer instances, you can peek into people's minds and possibly control their minds. That's an orange, and that's the condition of Ruby, who is our main character in the original trilogy of The Darkest Minds. In the first book, we follow Ruby. We follow her through escaping where the children who get these powers are sent and navigating the outside world, while we also get some very important flashbacks to see what shaped her into the person she is today. Over this first novel, we get a lot of world building. We see what led to this happening, to these series of events. We see how people reacted and are still currently reacting to the situation. And we really see Ruby start to grow. She goes from this, I would say, shy and almost timid, please don't look at me, I just want to be safe kid, because it's dangerous to be an orange. So she finds a way to hide this fact about herself. To towards the end of the book, she is gaining more confidence and she knows what she wants to do, and that is help other people like her, and not just oranges, but blues and greens. All of this, like, different powers have different colors that associate the level of danger as perceived by adults without these powers. And when you have these powers, you're called Psy. And we just see her really decide, I'm going to take charge of my own destiny. I'm going to make sure that other people didn't go through what I go through. I really liked it. I thought this was so well done. I discovered Alexandra Bracken later in her career, and I think she's such a talented writer, and she's such an amazing author and like as a celebrity, like I look up to her. I think she's really great. Never have met her, but from what I've seen, I follow her on social media. She seems pretty cool. Um, Reading this, again, it's still well written. This was earlier in her career, and I can see her growth, like an amazing piece of work. When I look at her other books that I love, I'm like, yeah, like I can see her growing and becoming an even better author in her field. I don't know if I told you what I rated this. 3.5 stars. Loved it. The second book in the original trilogy is Never Fade. I think when you set out, okay, pause, rewind. As a reader, I can imagine that as an author, when you set out with a universe that you know is going to be a multi-book work of art, because isn't that what books are? They're works of art. Um, I think sometimes individual books in that world can be maybe rated lower than the overall series because they have to do different things. Book one, you have to have world building. I need to be immersed in the world. Book two, you're pushing forward, you're making me care more. I want to get closer to the resolution, but not so close that there's not the next book that's needed. Sometimes I think second or third middle books in series can suffer, even if overall the series is amazing. With all that being said, I don't think that's the case for Never Fade. I think that this was such a strong book on its own. You definitely need the first book to know what's going on, but this is a continuation of Ruby's story. We see her strength from the first chapter, from the first book only get stronger. She has paired up with the Children's League. And if you've read the first book, you kind of know what that means. But that's all I'm going to say to avoid other spoilers. And she is working to make a better world, to make a safer world for Psy kids, and to help people. Overall, I gave this a 3.75 stars. I really liked it. I think even in book two, you can see the growth as an author that Alexandra goes through. Oh my goodness, and I cannot forget, there was a ship in book one that I was really rooting for, and I continue to root for that ship in book two. I won't name the names because I won't spoil it that much. And that ship kind of maybe gets, I thought it was a love triangle. I'm not sure if anyone else would think it's a love triangle, but I sure thought it was a love triangle. And I thought the original pairing was better. But another ship, another bombshell enters the villa, another ship enters the chat that I kind of love even more. And you'll have to wait for the review of book three to know if I was right and if my ship set sail. And oh my goodness, the third book review is already here. I was right. My ship set sail. Hooray! I was very excited with this. Sorry, that was so silly. We are still following Ruby, and we're still in her point of view in this series. And this is the conclusion. This is what we've been working for. We see everything tied up. We see the hopeful steps for the future. I think the writing is so well written and it's paced so well throughout the whole series. And this is such a strong conclusion that wraps everything up, but in a realistic way. At the end of it, you can see what they're hoping to attain, but you can also see that nothing's perfect. We live in an imperfect world, and that is reflected in this imperfect society in this novel. And there's going to be compromises, and not everyone's going to be happy. And everyone's just working towards the best compromise that they can get so that everybody is a little bit satisfied and a little bit unsatisfied. I think the ending was so well done. I was so happy. There were a couple of moments where my heart was racing and I was like, oh my goodness, don't do this to me. But I thought it was well done. A great conclusion to the original trilogy. Did you think that was it? Did you think I only read 6 books last month? Because sometimes I do only read 6 books, but not last month. Last month, I kept going. And the 7th book I read was Through the Dark. This is still in the Darkest Minds universe. If you can't tell from the cover and like how it just goes with everything, it's still in the universe. This is a series of novellas. So there are 3 different novellas in this book. And none of them are in Ruby's point of view, which I actually very much appreciated. Seeing the world expand. We have 2 what I would consider minor characters and 1 more main character that these novellas follow. The main character that it follows is Zoo. And oh my goodness, I have not done a good job of really telling you a lot about these books because I so desperately don't want to spoil anything for you guys. But Zoo is one of the main characters that is not our point of view in the original trilogy. And we get to see her point of view in one of the novellas. Now, I rated this just as one single book. I didn't individually rank the novellas or give them a star rating. As a whole, I gave it a 3.75 stars. Again, I really liked it. I was consistent this month in how I felt about these novels. If I had to only pick one, my favorite was definitely Zoo's. I loved that novella. It ripped my heart apart. It made me so sad, but it was so good. It was so well written. I really loved how the universe was expanded in the novellas. And I loved that it starts out with a little note from the author about if you want to read this in timeline order, where to read this, like in between which books, because like I said, some happen in parallel, one happens immediately after. And I didn't know that these were just novellas. Not just novellas. Novellas are great. But I didn't know that that this was a compilation of novellas. So I thought it all happened at the end of the series. I think even reading the original trilogy and then reading the novellas, it was wonderful. I loved seeing the world expand. It was really good. Last, but certainly not least, the last book I read in May was The Darkest Legacy. Again, this is in the Darkest Minds universe. This is, to my knowledge, the last of the Darkest Minds universe that has been released. And Alexandra Bracken has stated that she doesn't currently have plans to come back to this world, which I can appreciate. I think she has a lot of stories to tell. And between the original trilogy, the 3 novellas, and this final standalone book, she did a wonderful job creating a universe, putting us in it, making us care, and see the reasonings behind the motivations for our characters. And she tied everything up nicely multiple times. Like the original trilogy, you could just read that and you would be satisfied. If you want to expand it with the novellas and you didn't want to go further, also very satisfying. if you're like me and you're like, no, please give me everything, this is also a satisfying conclusion. We again do not follow Ruby's point of view, but we follow Zoo's point of view. So maybe everyone really liked Zoo's novella. Maybe Alexandra really enjoyed writing from that POV. Um, but it's several years after the end of the original trilogy now, and we see Zoo as the youngest from the original trilogy group, how she's trying to be seen as an adult in her own right, and now she is taking on this legacy of fighting for people and standing up for what's right, and how even with the best of intentions, plans can go awry. And what do we do now? Um, it's wonderful. It's, again, I feel like I can't say much because I don't want to spoil anything. But if you like the original trilogy, I think you will also enjoy this conclusion. I gave it a 3.75 stars. Like I said, I was consistent. I think these were really well written. And I think I missed Ruby's point of view a little bit in this longer novel and not just a novella. But after I got into Zoo's point of view, I was like, no, this was the story that needed to be told. Ruby's story has been concluded. You may get a cameo or two, or a few cameos from people from the original trilogy and the novellas. But it was Zoo's turn, and it was Zoo's message that needed to be talked about this time. And I think it was really good. So there you have it. Those are the books I read in May. All very highly rated, in my opinion. All very good for summer reads. But if you want a little sneak peek, if you haven't seen the content calendar that I posted on Instagram and YouTube, next week I'm going to be talking about different reads for the summer and what your summer TBR might need to include. Um, it's a time of year where a lot of people go on vacation, and whether you bring a book for only while you're traveling, whether you travel to a place where you plan to read, I'm going to throw out some different books that I think make good summer reads and good maybe beach reads, maybe hiking reads. I'm going to give you some suggestions. I'm going to give you some suggestions based on the books that I've read in the past, some recently, some not as recently. And we'll go from there. And then at the end of the month, we're starting a new series called Lost the Plot. I've seen some plot summary videos from other YouTubers, and I've really liked them, whether it's a series that I personally couldn't get into, that I've had friends like, that I can then talk to them about at least some plot points, or if it's a series that I haven't read in a while and I don't want to go back and reread everything. I just want a recap of, hey, this is what you forgot. So I'm taking inspiration from other creators, and I'm going to start with The Hunger Games. And I'm going to start with The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So we're going to do a re-listen, we're going to take notes, and we're going to go over the plot of that book. And the plan will be to release a Lost the Plot every other month, because I think this is going to be a bigger production than what I've done in the past. And we're going to work through the Hunger Games books to start. But if you have an idea of something you'd like to do, maybe The Darkest Minds, maybe another series, let me know. I'm always down for a reread. I'm always down for a first time read when trying to figure out the plot. But until next week, I hope you guys are all having wonderful times and wonderful lives. and I hope you are reading a really good book. Bye.